What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So today's video, we're back to work on the new $100 mini bike. So if you guys are a little confused on why I have two identical mini bikes here, kind of explained it in last video on why I have the exact same frame I bought probably 6 months ago for $100, and I bought another one for $100. And in the last video, we actually got this thing built up and took it for its first test drive. Ended up swapping in a 212 Hemi, exact same power plant as that one over there. And I'm basically trying to make these things almost identical as possible because I really like the way that one runs and drives and sounds and all that. So in the last video, we actually started by putting a 3D printed intake on this thing that I kind of made custom, going all the way up into the storage box here. And I'm actually planning on making this a whole kit here soon, so kind of stay tuned for that in the next couple of days. But this thing got the intake noise, but doesn't really have any speed right now because we kind of haven't tuned up the carburetor enough for this whole snorkel kit, and it's going to take a little bit of dialing in. So I finally found my jets in this kind of whole array of parts around here. Finally got the jets for this thing so we can actually get it tuned up. But before I spend the time actually getting this thing 100% tuned up, I want to do one more modification to this thing and actually give it a little bit of a presence when you're actually driving it around and having some fun with it, which is actually doing an exhaust on this thing. So on this mini bike over here, I actually have the strong straight pipe side exit exhaust on this thing, and this thing sounds amazing. It's not really too loud, but it's also got a good tone to it. So I kind of wanted to do something similar to this mic without spending 40 or 50 bucks, because I'm trying to keep this thing as budget as possible compared to this one where I put a little bit of money into. This one I haven't really put $1 into so far. So I ended up actually finding a 125cc exhaust I had from one of my quads that I ended up putting a 212 swapped into, lying around, and I've been kind of just mocking this thing up, seeing how it would fit. So if we ended up actually pulling off the stock muffler here, we could start modifying this thing up a little bit and actually getting it to bolt up something like that. And this thing does have a big old muffler on it, and it's nice and red, so I started calling this thing a red rocket so far. So I'm a little curious on how it's actually going to sound with the muffler. I want to keep it on for right now. I already know it's going to probably hang off way over here, but it'll at least kind of look funny for the meantime, get a couple sound clips of that. And then later on, I could always kind of chop it right after the heat shield and just kind of have a straight pipe, maybe put a little slip-on muffler in the future or something like that. So I want to get a nice little exhaust built up for this thing for basically free at this point. So let's get to work on this thing. I want to start by pulling this muffler off, getting that thing out of here, and start kind of mocking this thing up 100%, seeing how it'll fit, and getting this thing actually chopped up a little bit, because this thing has the stock ceiling for the 125 with the flange on here, and I was actually lining this flange up to a muffler, and it's pretty damn close to the 212 stud pattern. So my plan is to hopefully maybe be able to drill out that flange a little bit and actually be able to bolt it up onto this motor. It kind of saves me having to cut another flange off something else, but I think I got a couple old exhausts. I might be able to just cut off a 212 flange and just weld this onto this thing. And I'm actually curious on how it's gonna sound, because it's actually got some good length to it, and it's also got this little section right here. I think it might be a resonator, it could just be a tube slipped over it and welded, who knows. But it should have some good length to it, and actually nice and beefy pipe. So compared to that one, it should have a little bit of different tone and still kind of have a little bit different look. It'll also keep it more tucked in the center of the frame, because that one hangs way too low, so it's kind of hard to kick up the kickstand and put it back down. So tucking it up a little bit will make it a lot nicer. And we also have a couple mount points where the factory chain guard went, and that we'd be able to actually build some tabs off this thing and actually mount it into the bike. So let's get to work on that thing, start chopping that thing up, getting the old muffler off, and start mocking it up, seeing what we get done, and probably break out the welder and start welding up some stuff. I've been working away on this thing, and I basically finished the exhaust all the way up, all off camera, just kind of knocked it all out. I did film a little bit of it. That was me kind of grinding, cutting some things off, and actually starting to weld the flange onto the exhaust. Luckily, the 125cc flange literally matched perfectly to the 212 bolt pattern, so I was able to reuse that and just kind of re-weld it and where I kind of need it at the end of the day. So this thing is looking a little crazy, especially with this big old red rocket muffler hanging off of it. I do want to at least hear how it sounds with it, but I think that at the end of the day, I'm probably just going to end up taking a grinder right to it and chopping it right off. And at that point, it should be perfect. But once I got that all welded up, I ended up having to grind down the flange a good bit because I kind of warped. So got that all ground down nice and flat, and she is sealed up. And then I noticed that it was a little bit wobbly back here, so I ended up adding a little mount right here in the middle, and she is nice and strong now. You can literally shake the whole bike with it. So I didn't really account for actually moving the engine forward and back, so we might need to notch that mount just a little bit to actually do all that, but it should be good for right now. Luckily the chain is all set up for this kind of whole setup, but I do want to change the sprocket, so we'll see about that in the future. But I do want to at least hear this thing with the whole muffler on there. So I think tomorrow we'll actually start this thing up for the first time, especially since it's pretty late. And I also want to work away on actually getting this thing looking a little prettier, because all the rust and red is really not looking good on this thing. So I think in the meantime, I'm going to end up pulling this exhaust off, prepping this thing for paint as much as possible, because this thing is pretty rusty underneath this heat shield. Get this heat shield off of here, probably paint that up as well. And I think tomorrow during my lunch break, I'm gonna pick up a can of paint and start spraying this thing real quick, so I can have it nice and painted by the time I get home from work, and we can install it, actually hear this thing run with the muffler, and there's a good chance I'll probably just end up chopping it off real quick, actually get this thing back to a straight pipe, and actually get this thing tuned up and rip it for the first time, actually doing some full pulls and hopefully tuning it 100%, because we're gonna have to see, because now it's actually got an intake and exhaust, so I might need some more fuel, so I'm probably gonna have to slap a bigger jet in this thing. But I would like to really exhaust heat wrap this thing, but I don't have any at the moment, so that is something we're gonna be doing in the future, so kind of stay tuned for that. So in the meantime, let me get this all prepped up, and I'll probably catch up with you guys tomorrow once I'm actually getting this thing all painted up and good to go, and mounted back on the bike for the final time to actually rip this thing around. Alright, so it's the next day. Last night I ended up getting the exhaust off there, ended up prepping her up for paint, and then today we got some heat paint and started spraying down on this thing and got her nice painted up a nice flat black. Then I also repainted the heat shield red again, just because I thought if I paint that black and it ends up getting scratched up, it's just gonna have a bunch of red scratches throughout the whole paint. So I ended up just doing that red again, and it kind of matches the little red sticker on this side. So I think that'll look all right for right now, and if anything, I could always spray it black in the future. But I didn't even go spray painting this muffler yet, because I already know I'm gonna end up chopping this thing off. But it is finally time to at least start this thing up and actually hear it with the muffler. And if this thing is too quiet, I think I'm gonna try maybe pulling out the baffle as well, and then kind of hear it from there. But worst case, we'll just end up getting the angle grinder, chopping it right off. It kind of sucks because I just painted it, so I'm gonna have to paint that end up a little bit because it's gonna be raw metal, but it shouldn't be no bad, just to touch it up real quick. So I'm gonna get this thing all set up and hopefully floating up in the air so the rear tire's spinning, and I can actually rev this thing up a few times so you guys can actually hear it. And I want to play around actually getting this thing tuned up as well with the exhaust, so I'm probably gonna end up slapping a bigger jet up into the carburetor there and then getting this thing tuned up. And we might end up taking it for some rips today. I'm not really sure in today's video, just because it's starting to get late already, because I kind of got a late start to today's video. So I guess let's get this thing knocked out and see when we get done and actually hear how this thing sounds. Set up on a milk crate and some wood underneath it to kind of help level it out. She feels pretty solid, so I'm hoping this will actually work pretty good. The tire's not touching up in the front there, so we can at least kind of rev this thing up a little bit and actually have this exhaust sound. So I'm gonna set you guys up and let's start this baby up and see how she sounds with this big old muffler on. I think right there should work perfect. I haven't heard this thing yet, so I guess let's find out. Switch. Insanely quiet. Let's rev it up a little bit. Alright, that thing is way too quiet and it started blowing out some white smoke, so I think there might be something inside the muffler. Honestly, I have no clue, and it stinks. It smells like there's something dead inside of that thing, so I guess I'm gonna pull the baffle out and see. I guess maybe we can make it a little bit louder, but I might just end up getting the angle grinder and finally just chopping this thing off because this thing is looking real ugly. I wanted to film this just in case anything nasty is hiding inside this muffler. I ended up breaking the 3 bolts loose for the baffle, so I really want to see what's in here because this thing smells like something is alive or was living and is now crisped up in the exhaust. Okay, she don't look too bad. Let me get a light in there. Oh, what the? Hey, it might be a little bit louder, so I guess let's see if this thing's a little bit louder at least with this kind of whole baffle off of there. There's nothing hiding in there, but who knows? Maybe we can get something to blow out of there. Still stinks. I don't know why I put my face right next to it, but this thing stinks like crazy. So I think I'm just gonna end up taking the angle grinder and finally chopping this thing off. We heard what it sounds like with the big old muffler, so let's end up chopping this thing off and actually hear how it sounds straight piped, and then I can let it warm up a little bit, kind of heat up some of this paint, kind of just let it smoke off a bit, and then I'll probably end up getting this thing all tuned up and we can actually hear this thing ripping and actually getting all the RPM. A good time to call me. Hell yeah. She is chopped off of there. Hell yeah, that thing is looking sick. I love that little angle cut, and I even cut the heat shield too earlier before I even painted it. So now we just gotta touch that paint up a little bit, but we're gonna get this thing started up and actually hear how this thing sounds. But I think I'm gonna slap a new jet in this thing right before, but actually, let's hear this thing run real quick, because I'm a little curious on how this thing's actually going to sound. Let's get you guys set up. That looks pretty decent. At least just for a quick couple seconds. There we go. That's the type of noise I'm looking for. Now, that's more the type of noise I'm looking for on this thing. So, I'm gonna slap a bigger jet in this thing finally and actually get this thing tuned up, because I can tell it's just running out of fuel already. And it really doesn't smell that rich in here, so let's get some more fuel slapped up in this thing so we can actually take it out and get some load on it and possibly take it for a test drive. We'll see, but let's get to work. Alright, so I've been messing around with this thing, ended up swapping in a bigger jet to it. I think its stock one had into it was like a 70 or 73. I put something more like an 80, 85 into it, and it seems to be running a lot better. And I've been loading this thing up, getting some heat into it, and actually testing it out, making sure it's not breaking up. So sounding pretty good. I'm just gonna let it run for a little bit longer. Just gotta get that paint all smoked off, and then I might throw a head cam on real quick and see if we can rip it up and down the road real quick, and at least hear how this thing sounds under some load. But this thing is just chopping away. It sounds amazing. I'm stoked for how this exhaust came out. Oh, it sounds so good. Alright, I know I took a bunch of clips already of how this thing sounds. Oh, the clutch is acting a little weird though. But this thing sounds like it's got like a crazy rev limiter to it, but you guys gotta hear this. This thing sounds perfect. I love that little rev limiter this guy. It's probably just banging the governor, but that thing sounds sick. But alright, I think she's about ready to actually take it for a rip, so hopefully you guys can actually see with how dark it is in the head cam. So let's take this thing for a rip real quick and actually hear how this thing sounds with some load. I hate to say it, but it literally, once I shut the camera off and rolled the bike outside, it started raining, and it was just a little bit too much rain for me to actually rip this thing around, especially not having a lid on the top of the box here and basically having an exposed air filter. If it was the other bike like over there with the lid, I might have just sent it and actually seen what this thing could do, but I think we're just gonna hold it off till next video and we can actually do like a complete test with this thing, actually see the top speed on it, make sure she's 100% good. And so far she sounds like she's gonna be ripping pretty good. I put the brake on and actually loaded this thing up pretty good, and it sounds like it's not breaking up, and we actually got all the RPM, and the exhaust is sounding real good. But in the meantime, I ended up starting to work on a few little things. So you might notice I got the headlight all installed on here. Kind of built this headlight out of 2 headlights, but I noticed I have a whole nother one sitting on the table over there I could build that would look a lot nicer on this thing, so probably end up swapping that on. But in the next video, I definitely want to see if we can wire that headlight up, because I have a good idea on how to put power and like a battery on the mini bikes without running a charging system on the 212. And I also ended up adding a little chain tensioner roller kind of right in the center here, just to kind of help tighten up the chain so I don't have to move the engine forward or back, especially with the new mount on the exhaust, because we're gonna have to drill that out a little bit just to kind of be able to at least adjust it a good bit. But everything's looking good, and this exhaust came out amazing. The heat shield's a little bright, but it works for right now. I definitely want to pick up some heat wrap so we can heat wrap this thing up all the way, make it just look that little bit nicer and actually keep some of the heat in there. Hopefully not burn anyone's legs with this whole setup. And it actually fits like perfect, because now you can actually put the kickstand down and not have to worry about burning your shoe like this bike over here. Honestly, I've been sitting here thinking about even swapping this exhaust onto that bike and putting that one on here, so this one could be kind of more ratty, kind of quick, throw anyone else on, and then this would be like the ultimate cruiser with a nice exhaust and everything all set up and dialed in. But I think for the meantime, we're gonna leave it on here for right now so you guys can actually hear it, and we can actually get some good sound clips with this thing, and it might even shoot some flames because it smells pretty rich. But I'm gonna at least maybe keep it for right now because it actually is running amazing. So we'll keep it like that for right now, and then if anything I can pull just a little bit more fuel out. But I do at least want to see a couple little flames pop out of that thing. So I guess stay tuned for next video when we actually able to take this thing out and rip it around a little bit. I think I'm gonna at least try to get out of the neighborhood and actually take it maybe off-roading, or just like a nice kind of flat area that I can kind of rip on it real good and actually have some room to get some mile per hour, but we'll see. So hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I know it wasn't really much, just kind of building an exhaust for the new $100 mini bike, and then tidying up with small things in the end, like the headlight and the tensioner, which really wasn't much, but this exhaust is sounding real good, so I'm stoked to actually hear this thing under some load soon. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hope you like, comment, subscribe. Stay tuned for more content, and peace out.